Welcome to my channel, the Good Book Tales video. We're diving deep into one of the most powerful and mysterious stories ever told. The 10 Commandments. But this isn't just the version you've heard in school or maybe caught glimpses of in old movies. No. This is the story behind the story. A tale of power, faith, rebellion, sacrifice, and the fine line between divine law and human will. Imagine standing at the foot of a massive, trembling mountain. The sky above is dark, churning with storm clouds, thunder cracking like the voice of something not quite human. The air is heavy, people are gathered, thousands of them, trembling not from the cold, but from fear. They've been wandering a desert for weeks, following a man who claims to have spoken directly with God. And now they wait, breathless, as he climbs Mount Sinai alone, to receive what will become the foundation of morality, law, and order for generations. The 10 Commandments. But before these tablets were etched in stone, there was chaos. This story begins with a man named Moses, once a prince of Egypt, now a fugitive turned reluctant prophet. He's not perfect. He questions himself. He argues with God. He carries the weight of an entire nation on his shoulders. A nation of former slaves, broken and searching for purpose. And now, in the silence of the desert, Moses is about to come face to face with the divine. But what if I told you this story is more than just a list of do's and don'ts? What if the 10 Commandments were not just spiritual guidelines, but a revolutionary code? A blueprint for surviving in a lawless world. What if this was never just about religion, but about power, control, freedom? As Moses climbs higher, the mountain seems to push back. Each step he takes is harder than the last. He's not just climbing a mountain, he's ascending into a spiritual war zone. The people below are restless, hungry, tired. Some are starting to doubt. Some are whispering about old gods they once knew in Egypt, and others are ready to rebel. Back in the camp, Moses' brother, Aaron tries to hold the community together. But fear spreads fast, and with fear comes chaos. One choice, one mistake, could break everything apart. And as the days stretch on, the silence from the mountain grows more terrifying than the sound of thunder. What happens up there? What does Moses really hear? Are the 10 Commandments direct words from God? Or something more complicated? More human? This story has been told for thousands of years, but tonight we're pulling back the curtain. Because this isn't just about stone tablets, it's about choices, consequences, the deep human struggle between right and wrong, and how thin that line can be. And just when you think it's all falling into place, something happens at the base of the mountain. Something that threatens to destroy everything before the commandments are even delivered. So stay with me, because what happens next will change everything you thought you knew about this ancient tale. And trust me, we're only getting started. The people at the base of Mount Sinai were growing uneasy. Days had passed since Moses disappeared into the thick cloud that swallowed the mountain's peak, and each passing moment only deepened their fear. Whispers spread like wildfire. Had he been taken? Had he angered the very God who had led them out of Egypt? Their faith, already fragile, was cracking under the weight of silence and uncertainty. The desert sun was relentless. The nights were cold. These people weren't warriors or kings. They were former slaves, scarred by generations of suffering. All they knew was survival, and now even that felt unsure. They had followed Moses through plagues, across parted seas, and into the wilderness with only a promise that a new life, a promised land, was waiting. But where was it? And why had their leader vanished when they needed him most? Aaron, Moses' older brother, tried to calm them. He told them to wait, to be patient, that Moses would return with the word of God. But the people were tired of waiting. Their fear turned into frustration. Some began to reminisce about Egypt, a place of suffering, yes, but also of predictability. At least there, they had food, structure, something to cling to. Now, they were lost, wandering, led by a man who'd left them behind in the name of some divine mission. And then, something shifted. A group among them started asking dangerous questions. If Moses was gone, then who was in charge? If the God who spoke to him wouldn't speak to them directly, maybe it was time to find another way. Maybe it was time to return to the gods they once knew. The gods of stone and gold. Gods they could see, touch, control. Aaron, caught between loyalty to his brother and the rising pressure from the people, made a choice, one that would change everything. In the shadows of the mountain, while thunder echoed from above, the fire of rebellion sparked below. A golden calf was being formed, melted from the very jewelry they had taken from their Egyptian masters. It wasn't just a statue. It was a desperate cry for control, for clarity, for something they could bow to while the sky remained silent. And high above, on the trembling mountain, Moses stood alone, surrounded by smoke, lightning, and a voice not of this world. In his hands were the beginnings of something eternal. Commandments carved into stone, meant to guide, protect, and demand something greater from humanity. But down below, the people were dancing around a lie they made themselves. And Moses had no idea what waited for him at the bottom of the mountain. As the golden calf took form in the center of the camp, the crowd's energy shifted from fear to frenzy. Drums echoed through the desert air. Voices rose in chants, not of reverence, but of desperation masked as celebration. The people danced around their creation, clinging to the illusion that they were no longer lost. In their minds, this idol, this god of gold, was a sign that they hadn't been abandoned after all. But beneath the noise, the real conflict was boiling. Aaron stood to the side, watching the scene unfold with a heavy heart. He hadn't meant for this to go so far. He thought if he gave the people something, anything, to ease their panic, he could buy Moses more time. But now, he saw it spiraling out of control. The same people who had once trembled before the Red Sea now danced before a statue, forgetting everything they had seen, everything they had survived. Meanwhile, up on Mount Sinai, Moses was receiving more than commandments. He was being shown visions of betrayal, of a people already slipping away from their covenant with God. The weight of the stone tablets in his arms was nothing compared to the weight of what he was about to face. He had believed the commandments would be the start of a new chapter, a foundation for something holy. But now, that future was cracking before it even began. Back in the camp, a few stood back from the celebration unsure. They whispered among themselves, torn between the crowd's growing madness and the quiet pull of something deeper. A loyalty to the unseen, a memory of miracles that still lingered in their hearts. These were the ones who would soon have to choose a side. And the moment of decision was coming fast. The sky above Mount Sinai darkened even more as the storm gathered strength. Lightning cracked through the clouds like a warning, sharp and sudden. The winds howled, sweeping across the mountain and into the valley where the people danced, deaf to the signs. They didn't see the shadow descending from the mountaintop. A figure coming down fast, carrying the weight of something far heavier than stone. Moses had seen everything. The visions were clear. The golden calf, the fire, the people turning their backs on the very God who had just freed them. His face was tight, his steps fast, driven by fury and heartbreak. The commandments, still glowing with a divine presence, trembled in his hands. This wasn't just betrayal. It was a collapse of trust, a shattering of the very covenant he had begged for on their behalf. Back at the camp, the noise had reached a fever pitch. The golden calf gleamed under the torchlight as the people celebrated what they thought was a new beginning. But in that moment of false joy, a few heads turned. they felt something shift in the air. The drums stopped. The laughter faded. Moses emerged from the dust and shadows, silhouetted by flashes of lightning. His eyes swept over the crowd, over Aaron, who couldn't meet his gaze, over the idol, still warm from the fire, over the people who had forgotten everything in the span of a few days. The tablets in his hands pulsed with divine energy. They were meant to be the law, a gift, but now they were a judgment. The silence hung heavy, thick with dread. No one moved, no one breathed, and just as the tension reached its peak, Moses raised the tablets high into the air. Everything was about to change. And then, with a cry that echoed across the valley, Moses hurled the stone tablets to the ground. They shattered against the rocks, splintering into pieces as though the covenant itself had been broken. The crowd froze. For the first time in days, silence truly fell. The golden calf still stood, untouched, but the weight of what they'd done suddenly hit like a wave. No one dared speak. Some dropped to their knees. Others turned their faces away in shame. But Moses wasn't done. His voice, raw with pain and fury, thundered through the camp. He demanded answers from Aaron, from the elders, from anyone who had allowed this rebellion to take root. Aaron stammered, trying to explain. He pointed to the fear, the pressure, the desperation. He claimed the calf just appeared. But Moses wasn't moved. He looked around and saw not just disobedience, but something deeper, something darker. This wasn't only about losing patience. Something had changed in the hearts of the people. A door had been opened, and something had slipped in. Then the unexpected happened. From within the crowd, a voice rose, calm, almost too calm. It belonged to a man named Korah, one of the leaders of a wealthy family among the tribes. He stepped forward, not in shame, but in defiance. He questioned Moses, not just his authority, but his connection to God itself. If God could speak to Moses, couldn't he speak to others too? Why should they follow one man, one voice, one version of truth? The golden calf, he said, was not rebellion. It was freedom, a symbol of power the people could see and understand. The camp erupted again, but this time not in celebration, in division. Korah's words didn't just challenge Moses. They cracked the fragile unity that had held the tribes together. Some began to murmur in agreement. Others backed away, uncertain. The conflict had shifted. It was no longer just Moses versus the people's impatience. It was Moses versus a growing movement, one that threatened to split the nation before it was ever truly formed. And up above, the sky rumbled once more. Thunder, louder than before, rolled across the desert. A storm wasn't just coming, it was already here. And this time, it wouldn't be stopped by broken stone. The real test had just begun. Moses stepped forward, his face hard, but his voice steady. He called out to the people, giving them one last chance, a clear choice. Whoever is on the Lord's side, come to me. For a moment, nothing moved. The air was thick with tension, with fear, with guilt. Then slowly, a few began to step forward. Then more. The tribe of Levi gathered around Moses, eyes burning with a mix of loyalty and confusion. They didn't know what was coming, only that they had chosen a side. Korah didn't back down. His eyes met Moses's with cold defiance, and those who stood with him didn't flinch either. What started as rebellion had now become a full challenge to Moses's leadership, to divine authority itself. The divide was clear. The time for patience had passed. Then came the moment no one could have predicted. Moses turned toward the earth itself and cried out, not in anger, but in pain. If these men die a natural death, then the Lord has not sent me. But if the earth opens and swallows them alive, then you will know. And before he could finish, the ground trembled beneath their feet. A deep rumble echoed through the valley. The crowd scattered, screaming. The ground beneath Korah and his followers cracked wide open with a roar, and in a flash, they were gone, swallowed by the earth itself. Dust and silence followed. No one spoke. No one moved. The rebellion had ended, not with swords, not with shouting, but with a silence that haunted every soul in the camp. As the dust settled, Moses stood alone once more, weary but unshaken. The golden calf had already been melted, ground to dust, and scattered in water. The people drank the bitter result of their choices. Unity was restored, but it had come at a cost, and just when it seemed the conflict was over, the twist came. That night, a strange fire appeared at the edge of the camp, not destructive, but glowing, steady, unnatural. Those who watched said it looked like it was forming something, not a message, not an idol, but the faint outline of new tablets, as if, in all the chaos, grace was not yet gone. Something was being offered again, a second chance, but at what cost? And would they take it this time? By morning the strange fire had faded, but the impression it left remained in the hearts of everyone who saw it. The outline of new stone tablets had been real, not carved by human hands, but shaped in silence, as if heaven itself was giving them another chance. Moses, though exhausted and older in spirit than the day before, knew what needed to be done. He climbed the mountain again, this time not in triumph, but in humility. There were no crowds watching him ascend, no cheering, just quiet footsteps and the weight of lessons painfully learned. For 40 more days and nights, he remained on Mount Sinai, fasting, praying, listening. When he finally returned, his face shone with a light no one had seen before, not fire, not judgment, but something purer. In his hands were the new 10 commandments, written again by the hand of God. This time, they weren't just rules, they were a second beginning. The people didn't celebrate when he returned. They didn't dance or shout. They stood in silence, watching him walk back into the camp. A man changed, and a people changed with him. There was no more talk of idols, no more rebellion. They had seen too much, lost too much, but in their eyes now lived a different kind of fear. Not terror, but reverence. Aaron returned to his role as high priest, quieter and more grounded. The Levites stood taller, not in pride, but in purpose. Even the skeptics fell into line, realizing that this journey they were on was far more than just crossing a desert. It was about learning how to live with each other under a law greater than any one man. The golden calf was gone, but its memory remained as a warning. And those new stone tablets became more than relics. They became the core of a new identity, a covenant restored not through perfection, but through mercy and renewal. The commandments, once shattered, now stood as a symbol of how broken things could still be mended. And that's the story of the 10 Commandments. Not just a story of law, but of grace, a reminder that even when people fall, even when fear and failure take hold, the chance to rise again is always there, if we're willing to listen, to change, and to keep walking forward.